We going? I should probably check. I don't even know what's going on.
Oh, sorry.
But yeah, we are going.
All right. Hello, everybody. How's it going? We hope you're doing well. Welcome to our Thursday Vinny Live. I prefer to call it Thursday or
Theology and Culture Thursdays.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's why he's the lead pastor. He's got the gift of gab. So that being said, today what we want to do on Thursdays is look at a topic that's happening in culture, or even just a theological topic that's important to us, and just kind of dive into that topic. And so a few things first before we get into today's topic. Next Thursday, what we're going to do is we're going to jump into what we call question and response week. So we want to hear any of your big questions about the Bible, or things you've been wondering personally about the Bible.
Or little.
Or little questions too.
Like
almost preferably little questions.
Yeah,
actually.
It would be a little question.
What's the first book of the Bible?
Oh yeah, Lamentation. Genesis.
Yeah, Genesis. So that being said, if you have any questions, you can put them in the comments. You can message one of us. You can email one of us. You can text one of us. And we'd love to just get some of those questions. We might not get to all of the questions, but we might pick some of the ones that maybe we're getting asked a bunch, or if we know there's like a sermon coming up where we're going to be diving into that, we might not pick that question. But send us your questions, because next Thursday it's going to be just question and response time. And part of why we call it response time is I stole that from the Bible Project guys, who instead of say question and answer, they like to say question and response, because sometimes the way that they will respond to a question has changed over the years. So
interesting. I've never heard that.
Yeah, you know.
Yeah.
So anyways,
guys.
Yeah. So that's what we'll be doing today. I'm looks like I'm messing on my laptop because I want to make sure the live stream is coming in right now, and it looks like it is working. So today, our topic, we're going to be talking about prayer and our culture in general. Just prayer, the idea of prayer, not just even prayer to God, but just prayer in general and our culture. So that being said, today, interact with us as well. If you have questions about prayer or thoughts or whatever, we're going to try to respond on here if we can. So sometimes the questions don't pop up quite right on my laptop, but hopefully they do.
Shout out to Angie especially. Brandon and Jess would love you too, but Angie especially. Good to see you. Good to hear from you. Way down in the land of Fiend.
Yeah, good to see you, Angie. Former interns. A lot of former interns on here, so that means we didn't scare them away too bad, except they moved away. So today we're going to be talking about prayer and culture, and kind of one thing in particular made us want to do this is we saw there's a bunch of articles going around a bunch of different Christian websites that there's this gal, Jeanette Benson, who did a study on Google searches in the midst of this like coronavirus time, this COVID-19 time, and what people are Google searching. And what she saw is that prayer, Google searching for the word prayer is just rising to the top. It's just this is becoming a common search. I'm going to read some quotes from this study. So during March, all her research in March, this is what she's seen with Google searches for prayer being surged to the highest level during the past 5 years for which comparative Google search data is available, surpassing all other major events that otherwise instigate intensified demand for prayer, such as Christmas, Easter, and Ramadan. So even bigger than those seasons of life. And then she also says, I find that the intensified searches on prayer during the COVID-19 pandemic is global. It occurs on all continents and for Christians and Muslims. Even Denmark, one of the least religious countries in the world, sees systematic increases in internet searches on prayer. She says this as well. The surge mainly coincides with increases in the registered cases of the COVID-19 rather than surges in death rates. Prayer intensity also rises in countries that have only recently been hit by the pandemic themselves. So, interesting study that she has. You can look it up online if you could Google it and find the study by Jeanette Benson. But she basically did all this research looking at the last 5 years and Google searches, and prayer is just surging to the top. And there's, some of the things that's happening all over the world. It's particularly happening where like cases of the coronavirus are popping up in countries. Not so much the death rate as much as just the cases, which is kind of interesting. Mm-hmm. So today we're just going to talk about prayer and culture. We're going to talk about different. I just got some questions for Vince and be just a dialogue between us two in some ways, and I'd just like to hear some of Vince's thoughts and even some of your thoughts in the comments about prayer. But so Vince, not just our culture, or not just cultures that are Western or have Christian backgrounds or Christian whatever you want to say in them, Christian influences in them, but cultures all across the world, these Google searches, these internet searches for prayer are spiking and growing and becoming one of the top searches in these countries. So Vince, why do you think this is happening now alongside the Corona stuff?
Yeah. I'll say I'm happy it's happening now.
Yeah.
You know, I think on the whole, what an interesting thing. I think so much of this, and we've talked in length even last Thursday, kind of around the way our culture has been formed and what we really buy into from a worldview perspective as a culture, as Americans really, here in the West, and I think that plays a role here too, right? So we've been shaped through the scientific method, the Enlightenment, and so I think there's this sense of things should always make sense.
Yeah.
Chaos just never makes sense, right? Like, disorder, things we can't control, right? Things, why this, why now, you know, all that kind of stuff. I think when life gets disordered, I think we don't know what to do. Like, I think
it's good,
I think our culture has been bred and had the water we drink, right? It's just kind of this this understanding of like things should just kind of work out, and then so mix that with like that reality being something that's now globalized, you know. So this isn't just a Western issue; that's a globalized issue. So you mix that with like the globalization of technology. So now we know of stuff we would have just never known before, right? So there was anytime there were these things maybe in the past, it was like, well, you knew the guy down the street was sick, you know, or maybe the town over. We were able to access like global statistics. We're able to like literally watch the trend of COVID-19 work its way across oceans, and then you just get all that stuff. I think lastly, the thing that's really I think informing a lot of this is like the image of God, right? That's like on humanity. We are, as human beings, I think, right? Like, we are created by God to image Him. Part of that is this bringing order to things that are in disorder. And so when we try and navigate that in a disordered world, I think there's something in us that's trying to still find the answer, though, right? Like, sort of like, okay, what can we grasp onto? And so I think prayer kind of rises to the top. Like, I think it's this kind of thing. Okay, well, we don't know what the answer is, so maybe there is something beyond what we know and understand. You know? So I'd love to hear, honestly, like,
I think those things all are influences. I think the Christianese way to say the last thing you just said is like the eternity on our heart that God has put in us. The image of God is the Christianese way too to say it, but
that's something super secular. Right?
But I mean, so I think that's a big part. I think I don't know. One thing I'm thinking about. One thing I've been wrestling with, like just this. I've been thinking through this idea the last year a lot. Is I think a lot of times people come to the Bible and they don't feel like it gives very good answers for a lot of things, especially in our culture. And, you know, everybody kind of has their own thoughts on things. But one thing I think the Bible gives at least a good answer for is why there's suffering and evil in the world. And it doesn't always even give specific answers, like this input happened, now this output happened, but just that sin has so affected creation that's why there's suffering and evil in the world. And so, I don't know, it's just something I've been wrestling with, is like, does Christianity give the best answer for why evil exists? So like, you take somebody, my friends that would consider themselves atheists or really science-driven, which I really enjoy science too, but you know, always there's this sense in them that they're like, this is evil or this is wrong, and I'm like, but why? Like, well, because they've been culturally conditioned. That's their ultimate answer. And then I'm like, so then I don't know. So I've just been wrestling with that, and so I wonder if when there is something like this, it causes us to like go, man, no, something is wrong with the world, and that's not the way it's supposed to be. You know? Like, it's just interesting that humanity as a whole kind of has this instinct of like, this is not the way things are supposed to be, and you don't really see that like in anywhere else in creation.
Yeah.
Like, well, like, I mean, I can't speak to chickens, but I don't think chickens are like, hey, this is not the way it's supposed to be. I don't know.
That'd be dope though.
I mean, dolphins do. We know from.
Dolphins talk to chickens?
No, I'm saying dolphins react to
I
their
was
environment in
saying
different
what
ways. And chimpanzees do
Dolphin
things
chicken
like.
conversation.
Yeah. Anyway, so
no,
I
think,
digress,
but I think in the midst of that too, like, you know, with the image of God stuff, the eternity written in our heart stuff, it's we were designed to have a desire to communicate with God, right? Like that, his whole thing. Like he didn't need us. He longed. He's like, I'm going to create these people. They're going to have a relationship with me.
Yeah.
There'll be communion. We were going to walk around a garden. It was going to be fantastic. That type of deal. And then, but that was fractured. Right? That gets lost. So I think what humanity has done, it's always clamored for another God to be able to communicate with, right? To have a relationship with. When you get into a situation like where we're at in the States right now, where like money, it's difficult to trust in money right now, right? Because it's very, that God is not strong in what's happening with the world. Security, it seems very like we have to stay in our homes, right? Safety is not there. So like the gods of the Western world, they're not even accessible right now. I think for people, and so then I think there's this like reality of, well, I can't grasp onto the God that I normally grasp onto for peace, for like, you know, just hope and all that stuff. So I still have this image of God thing on me that says no, communicate with God. My false gods aren't accessible, so maybe I'll try this other one. You know what I mean?
No, that's good. It reminds me that, I don't know if I think it's a quote, but I've heard it like the whole like, there's no atheists in foxholes or bunkers or, you know, like in wars and stuff like that. Regina Spektor does a song about God laughing. I can't quite remember the name of the song, but it's interesting. She goes through all these different. It's kind of the simultaneous, that idea mixed with the parody of gods we've created for ourselves and the caricature.
If anyone knows the song, post it here.
God, I don't know. But so
you do a great Regina Spektor. You do a great do your Regina.
God. No. So I have to have the song playing in order to do it. But well, yeah, I think we don't experience a lot of that in the West or in our culture. We don't experience a lot of these things getting stripped away from us, security stuff. Like this is like the first event probably since 9/11 that America has like felt on the whole like scared or worried or. And I'm sure there's other things,
but even 9/11, right? Like there was this sense of after 9/11, and so for you young bucks that don't remember this, but after 9/11, it was like there was this unity that wasn't there before in this, but unity around like we're America, we rock. You know what I mean?
Toilet paper didn't run out. It was American flags.
It was the response was different than this one is. Totally. You know what I mean? Like I don't think there was the fear of this thing, and that is what's kind of an interesting phenomenon, right? It's like the fear of this thing we cannot see, right? Is like was like way more heightened than it was even back then, you know. So which makes sense, and it's obviously taken more lives than 9/11. Even in New York City now at this point, right? New York City has seen more deaths through COVID-19 than through.
That's interesting. Yeah, I wonder what I didn't see this. I didn't go in depth in the study or whatever, but I wonder what the average demographics of the people, even just, you know, Googling prayer is. Like, is it, you know, I'm just curious about their background.
Oh, that's interesting.
Their own religious beliefs.
Yeah, I'm actually saw that too.
It's just
all people from our church.
Yeah.
That's just, it's like, they don't teach them this enough.
Yeah, so, well, that's good. Well, let me ask you this. I think you, like, what's funny, a lot of people always joke around about our friendship, our relationship. We come from totally different backgrounds in a lot of ways. Just in a lot of ways. So I grew up in the church. Vince did grow up in the church, and so prayer's always been something to encourage. Like my dad would tell us to go and kneel and pray. Like we'd have these family prayer times, and we were forced into prayer. And I'd always pray like 5 sentences and feel like it was 6 hours. And like, Dad, please let me go play.
Yeah, we did not have those.
So what was like for you growing up as not a Christian?
Yeah.
Like, what was prayer a part of your life? Did you pray? Like, I don't know. Like, what was your involvement in prayer before Christ, if you can remember that?
Yeah. there wasn't a lot of it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, but there was like this weird kind of semblance of like God for sure. You know, so you didn't grow up Christian, but grew up in Louisiana. Many from the church know that. The first time I actually prayed, and I shared this even in a sermon a few weeks back, was when my baseball coach led our whole baseball team through the Lord's Prayer. You know, I was 8 years old, and I remember being the one that was like left out.
Yeah.
Like every other kid just started reciting this.
Because everybody knew it, but you didn't know.
I didn't know. As I had never heard it before. I literally had no idea what it was. I didn't know who Father. Like I didn't get it at all. And so I remember just like going home and asking my pop, like, hey, they did this weird thing. It started with Our Father, and he immediately knew he grew up in Catholic school and all that stuff. So then we
was he mad about it, or was he like, whatever?
He was fine. He didn't care. My dad's like crazy chill on anything.
This is before cancel culture type stuff.
So exactly. Cool. So I mean, like honestly, like that was the first time, and then prayer after that. There was, I would say, before as a Christian, the only time I had any type of like semblance of I would pray would be high school, because I had gone to youth groups, you know, and I've seen people pray. There was a moment where a friend of mine died in a car accident.
Oh wow!
And I remember going to her funeral, and her parents had lost their older daughter. Almost a year to the date of losing Holly, and so they lost their only two daughters a year apart in car accidents.
Wow, that's horrible.
And so it was just devastating. And anyway, I remember being at the funeral and seeing them walk around to us, like who were sad because we lost our friend, and they're like praying over different people and saying like, "Hey, can we pray for you?" I mean, they were sad, obviously, but like had this eternal perspective of God that I just didn't get. Like it was super baffling and weird. Like, hey, why are you like you should be acting different?
Yeah. Well, so bring us into that. So what were you thinking? Like, what were you like? Just this is weird, or did you give it some more thought?
Yeah, I think my first flinch was like, "What's wrong with you?" And then it seemed genuine. Like it was like this isn't a show. Like they genuinely like are grateful for the 17 years that they had Holly. And could not wait to see her again, and it was like legitimately like, no, this is gonna happen. Like it was super like hopefully matter of fact, you know, like no, of course, like we had her for 17 years and we're eventually gonna die and we'll be reunited, and and it's like I didn't have an idea of like I hadn't heard of heaven or anything, but man, that was like a really big moment. But just seeing them praying for people was like this didn't make sense. So anyway, I didn't have a ton of personal interaction with it. But once I got saved, though, a few people were like, hey, you're supposed to be doing this. So me and my little crew of friends, we would do like prayer all-nighters. So we just went from 0 to 100. So we went from no prayer to like, hey, we're all going over to the Thomases, and we're going to start at 9, and we're finishing at 5 a.m. Like we just 8 hours of prayer. Different people would fall asleep, you know, and then we wake each other up. And so we just went hard. And then we realized, like, I don't have to do this either. There's a healthy middle ground in the prayer life. So.
No, that's funny. Yeah, I remember when I was a kid, and it's, you know, it was very common in the sorts of churches I was growing up. You'd almost have this, like, conference speaker or guest speaker come in, and they'd talk about some, like, Christian school or internship they're part of, and they'd always be like, part of our internship is we have 4 hours every day where we just sit in prayer in the chapel or something. And I remember being like, that sounds like a nightmare. Like every time. And like all the other Christians are like, wow, that's great. And like,
it's like the friend that gets up at 4 a.m. for his morning devo, and you're like, all right, dude, like, good for you, buddy. But no, if you do that, honestly, like, truly good for you.
No, and well, what's funny is that, like, as a teen or whatever, however young or old I was when I was hearing that stuff, you know, some of it was before I truly loved Jesus, some of it was after. You know, as a teen, you're just like, this sounds like the chore. This sounds like what my dad was making me do. But there is an aspect of prayer. You begin to want to be in it more and more. Not always, though. There's definitely weeks where in my prayer times I don't want to pray.
No, that's true.
But
and there's times I don't want to like talk to my friends. You know what I mean? I don't want to talk to my kids.
You like really looked me in the eye.
When you said I just meant like, you know, like even the closest people to me. Like,
you can tell me, man. If you don't want to talk, it's fine. Oh, dig on Randy Morris for waking up early. Yeah.
Oh, then I did say Morris's. That was a different Morris I was talking about.
Oh, okay.
Anyway.
I mean, good for Randy that he can wake up that early. I want to see if he could stay up late to pray. That's the true test. Like the disciples stayed up late with Jesus into the
fell
night.
asleep.
Yeah, they fell asleep.
Oh, Randy, you would have fallen asleep for sure in Gethsemane.
So that is the actual dig on Randy.
Also, Sway, man, yeah, love the shirt, pal. Thanks, love you guys.
Yeah.
Redemption West Mesa, probably the best church in Redemption. Big shout out, you guys are great.
All right, so we've talked about our culture and prayer, our own personal prayer bit here. I'd love to. There's this idea that's been coming up a lot more lately. I'm still wrestling with it, and we've even like wrestled with it in the political realm. Like, where's this kind of stuff happening, politics wise, and we're not going to get into that. But what? Where do you see the direction? So this coronavirus happens. The Google searches for prayer goes up, skyrockets in like virtually every country. It says. So where do you see humanity going in general? Like, do you see them as becoming less religious, more religious? And again, I'm not saying Christian or not. I'm just saying a religious type of people, like people that believe in something outside this material universe, I guess. So so where do you see humanity going? Why do you see it going that way, or how? Or I'll just let you flesh that out.
D.A. Carson, if you're not too familiar with him, he's former president of the Gospel Coalition. I don't think he's still president, but maybe he is actually. But D.A. Carson has this this illustration. I thought it was really wise, and he has a lot of information to back it up. But talks about how and he initially just started talking about the gospel, but then he realized there's kind of these religious, spiritual movements around the world that pattern this way similarly. And what we initially started off with was the gospel, right? So what Christianity bases itself on. The gospel for one generation will be beloved, right? Like that generation's all in. Usually the next generation, it says the gospel will be assumed, and then that next generation says the gospel will kind of either be disdained or apathetic about, right? Okay. But then it tends to kind of circle back. And then, the eras in which the generations can get longer and shorter based on, events that happen in our world. And I truly think, I feel like this one, for our world, will reignite some level of pursuit of spirituality. Now, I don't know if it'll be Christianity. I think that there's a faith in our culture and country, the Jesus mostly.
Well, they like Jesus, but not the whole Jesus.
Not the real.
Not if you're gonna quote what he said.
Exactly. That's the.
Besides, love your neighbor, but
love that.
And some of
the do unto others.
Don't judge me, like that kind of stuff.
I know.
They're not big on the weeping and gnashing of teeth verses of Jesus.
Yeah. So I mean, that being said, I think the movement of culture is going to be a return to and a pursuit of something bigger,
something spiritual.
Yeah, and I think part of that was inevitable even outside of Corona, because listen, at the end of the day, this is going to sound, it's a Christian answer, but I think it's just true in general. Money makes a terrible god. It just fails everyone. You get all these people. I mean, there's that classic interview with Brad Pitt, if anyone hasn't seen that one, right, where he reached the pinnacle. He's the highest paid actor, and he's got wife and the kids, and he's got everything, and he gets in and he's like, this sucks. This didn't do it.
Dead inside.
And here's the thing: if that was like a one-off, all right, well, that's not. But that's the common story of money didn't do it. And I think there's going to be this new gift that comes out of technology. That is now we can all learn that that's not the answer, and it really is people and relationships, and ultimately a relationship with God. So I think it'll actually come full circle and draw people back to that stuff.
Interesting.
But I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. I mean, that's interesting. So the beloved to the assumed to the apathetic to the disdained type of a thing. Yeah. So you'd say we're here, at least in our culture, we're maybe on the tail end of this disdained type of a thing, right?
Yeah, I think it's this mix between apathy and disdain, of kind of just segments where it is. But I think because of, media and, this kind of what gets shared about what they think we believe. Yeah, I think it's moved into disdain. But, again, eventually things have to give, It's hey, this isn't working either.
Yeah.
So.
Huh, that's interesting. Yeah, I think that's a lot of truth to that. And so, it'd be interesting to look at how that looks around the world and all that stuff. I've been reading different stuff, even in that book I keep referencing, Making Sense of God. They make this big case for how people are becoming more religious globally, and just kind of how interesting that is in light of all that we know about the world, all that science shows us. And I think it is exactly what you're saying. I think people are testing things and seeing things, and they're going, I think there's something more. Something I love to ask people is like, hey, have you ever seen a ghost? And I know that's like a funny thing, but I would say I could talk to the most scientific person, and they'll be like, yeah, I think I have.
Oh,
I think it's a common thing. People are like, So I think there's just this sense in us, and I think it is because there truly is a spiritual world and a spiritual aspect to our human nature, and so I think people. Anyways, I think that.
I think there's also you're seeing if you get into this conversation, you have people who've left the church and they lived in this world called nuns, and not N-U-N but N-O-N-E-S, so they had nun faith or nun allegiance. A lot of the nuns that are returning to faith in some level are going to very high liturgy churches. They're showing up to the Episcopal Church and showing up to the Anglican Church, and they're like, hey, I want something that is, it's not the kind of the mega show thing. I want this real reverential, this just seems like the way you should experience God.
Tradition.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that says something too about kind of where we're at. But.
Yeah, that's interesting. Tell me this. I've noticed a lot. I've noticed a lot of, at least over the last 5 years, there's this movement of mindfulness. Now, mindfulness is not only 5 years old. It's been happening for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think I first started getting involved with mindfulness actually through. I was a door-to-door salesman for a little while, and that's I don't know why, but
he was
crushing
it. Yeah, was it water purifiers or something?
Yeah, I didn't actually sell them. I just got the I set up the salesman to come in, so I got their contact info.
You were the reco guy.
Yeah, so I was I would get their contact info and all that kind of stuff, and but anyways,
that's awesome.
Yeah, it was a
water softener.
Water softeners, yeah. Anyways, all that being said. What's interesting to me about mindfulness is there's kind of these weird connections to prayer, you almost do things that are similar to religious communities. You do things that are similar to even what the Bible would consider. And so I don't know, touch on that. Where have you seen prayer kind of become this balm for people, or maybe not a balm, but even just makes my life better, regardless of what I think spiritually? Because I feel like most Americans right now feels they're yeah, sure, I think there's a God, but I don't, whatever.
Right.
It's in the end, it's all gonna be sorted out. I'm good. Whatever. I'm gonna be good. Hopefully. So what are some aspects you've seen of prayer that kind of people, regardless of their spirituality, kind of go after, and benefits of prayer? And I don't know, have you seen any of that? What are some of them?
I mean, honestly, the mindfulness is blown up, right?
Totally.
You just see mindfulness workshops pop up, especially here in Flagstaff. That's just it's all the rage, which makes sense. What I think they're honestly tapping into, I think obviously we would have the Christian answer of no, they're actually conversing with God. They were meant to do that. That's the way God has created us to have that type of dialogue.
Totally.
But I think there's just a reality, dude. We live in such a crazy individualistic culture. We just don't have anyone to talk to.
Yeah.
Right? For most of the American population in the West, it's you have friends, but even when you begin to navigate some of those friendships, it's we don't really talk about much.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think what's being accessed is people are being able to actually process and communicate feeling, emotion, truth, stuff they're wrestling with, that they just feel they're not allowed to, given the culture that we live in, right? It's just weird to talk to a random friend. In the church, we're no, be vulnerable, we try and hammer that in. Dude, that's not what's being communicated when you're growing up in this culture. It's no, keep that crap to yourself, don't be a burden, don't complain, don't whine, push through. And so you don't have that type of depth of relationship. So I think people just don't get to talk much.
Yeah.
So part of that, I think, is just, holy crap, I get to converse and share a few things that I'm really thinking, and think things that I'm really thinking, instead of always having to push them down in an effort to present myself as perfect and or live a life that looks that way.
Almost like a spiritual, like journaling, if you will. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know, like
Yeah.
journaling, but maybe there's more impact because there's a spiritual aspect of it. Kind of what you're saying reminds me of, now, this comedian is not clean for those of you guys that like clean comedians, but Bo Burnham, he had this special kind of all about just kind of like how what he does is a performance, but how what everything everybody does is a performance, and how social media led to that.
Yeah, performance culture.
Yeah, and so he actually has a pretty poignant like finale in that show where he kind of is talking about this Kanye show and these different things. And again, guys, buyer beware. Like this is he's pretty foul sometimes, and so if you can look up his Kanye bit, I think it's pretty clean for the most part, and kind of this commentary of like everything's just a show. And like just leaving it at that, like not even like here's the solution, here's what you do, but just like everything's just a show. And I haven't thought about prayer in regards to even in just normal human relationships. If everything feels like a show, so why even so maybe that's why prayer is so attractive to people, because they can go, I don't have to put on a show when I'm praying, even if I'm not sure to whom I'm praying or whatever.
That's a great special, except for all the bad parts, but that last part especially.
Yeah, we haven't seen it. We just read about it.
Totally. And it was revealed to us through the Spirit. But I think there's also because these things are true, like the mindfulness thing, it's not just this individualistic piece, but I think there's also like the reality of when we have an opportunity to honestly just escape the enslavement that is running the rat race of our culture.
Yeah.
I think people feel a freedom and a liberty. They don't know why it's happening.
Yeah. So
mindfulness and prayer, and so we're trying to equate them in a bit, because that's in a sense what I think secularists are trying to do with mindfulness.
Yeah.
So we would call it prayer, but there's this reality of when you step into it, you're like, oh my gosh, I can think for myself. I'm trying to process stuff, because people don't realize that the rest of their life is being dictated to them by a non-neutral culture.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? That's saying no, you need to care about this.
Yeah.
This is how you need to live your life. And mindfulness is meant to detach you from those things. So I think some of the positive experience that people get is honestly a sense of freedom from the burden that is trying to live and run the rat race that our culture presents. But
yeah, which prayer for the Christian should be that.
Should be that, absolutely. Slow you down. Yeah. So
one thing I also noticed is Tyler Johnson at one of our leadership events, he brought in a doctor who was bringing us through these prayer and breathing exercises alongside of prayer. And some of these breathing exercises are even used in mindfulness, but he was really just calling them breathing exercises.
Right.
And so what I've noticed too is I think there's a draw to prayer in our society because of the health benefits of it, which makes sense. I feel like our culture is very, I mean, it's either you are or
you and I.
Yeah, we're the not health conscious, but a lot of our culture is just very health conscious and wants to be healthy. And there's that's a really good thing too. But and so what they found is just breathing in these different ways and breathing in deep or stopping and breathing.
Yeah.
All these things that happen when you pray are good for your actual body. I just think that's kind of interesting. One, from the standpoint of it's interesting that that's what's drawing people to prayer, but two, no wonder God has us pray in all these different kinds of ways and all these moments where we silence ourselves, go out.
Yes.
God not only knows the spiritual connection that's happening, but that something good physically, biologically is happening to our body. It's just interesting to me.
Yeah. So, absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right, well, let me ask you this. So this Google search about prayer, the spike in prayer Google searches, how do you think this is an opportunity for Christians in general? So we've got, statistically, our friends, Christian or not, but non-Christian friends, are Googling prayer.
Right.
How's that opportunity for us as Christians?
Yeah, well, I mean, it'd be the equivalent of, I guess, if you, I don't want to say experts, maybe too big a word, but if you were a a star soccer coach, you know what I mean, and you found out that there was this massive rise in Google searches for like kids soccer, you know what I mean? Like, it would be a good thing for you to insert yourself into that conversation. Why? Because you coach soccer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's obvious. So I think there's the most obvious low-hanging fruit piece of it is like prayer is like, that's kind of our deal, or at least it should be, right? I mean, that's like we are supposed to be a people of prayer. We believe something crazy that like we like talk to God and we hear from God and God like speaks to us and wants that, you know, like prayer is very much like our thing, and I don't want to say our thing limiting it to just Christianity. I mean, all religions are going to have some form of what they would call prayer, specifically obviously the Judaism and Islam and the Abrahamic faiths and stuff like that are going to claim that, you know, at the same time. I think for Christians, it's okay for us to think a little bit like, no, this is our deal. Like this is what we do. And so I think there's that. We have an opportunity to witness and teach people and talk to people that like, no, God wants to talk to you. He created you for this. We can talk image of God. We can talk about His desire to commune with people. We can talk about how much He desired to commune with people. That then like He literally came and lived here and then died for us and the whole deal. But I think there's also the other benefit for Christians in this is if the whole world is doing it, I sure hope we are.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if like a whole bunch of non-Christians and secularists and atheists or whatever are all thinking like, hey, we need to pray. Gosh, man, this should be like the prime time for the church where we've often said, hey man, like how do we make Redemption Flagstaff like a place of prayer? And are we going to be a church that prays? Like hopefully this is a season that like actually moves the like Christians to like, no, we're actually gonna do this, you know. So I think those two stand out the most.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think that I think it is just an opportunity to like to almost like reach out to your friends and just be like, just ask these simple questions of like, hey, what's giving you anxiety? What can I be praying for you? Like, I don't know. I maybe you don't even have to necessarily start with the awkward like, how can I pray for you? But maybe that is like where you can start. I don't know. I think there's.
It'd be interesting, like you know, like people logging in and off. And I think there's only 5 people watching right now. But if people come back and watch this later as well, like if you would do maybe a social experiment on this for us, and on your Facebook page or wherever your social media is, and just post something that says, "How can I be praying for my friends?" And just see maybe some of the responses you get and who you get them from. Because I bet, like I you know, this is kind of one of the things that I think it's like. One of the best like opportunities for Christians is, are you close enough to a bunch of people that when stuff goes wrong, you're the one they call, that type of thing. And so like, as soon as this Corona stuff started hitting, there's a lot of people that have been, it sounds almost like I'm trying to say I'm great at this, but this is an idea of like, I'm a friendly person or whatever, but that there's been a lot of people saying, hey, like what do you think's going on? And why is God doing this? And that type of thing. So I'd be interested if you guys are out there and would post that on your Facebook page and just say, hey, how can I be praying for y'all? You know, and just see the answers you get, and then actually please pray for people too. You know?
That's good.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this: do you have any? So, I do think ultimately the Google searches for prayer spiking. It is a good thing. Like it's awesome. I think anytime, you know, it makes me think of the God-fearers in Acts where they didn't believe in Jesus as God yet, but they like were going towards that realm. You know?
Right.
But so are there any pitfalls to this? Are there any like what are some of your concerns at least in the idea that prayer, this spike in prayer searches? Any concerns you have with that?
Yeah, I mean, well, I think the most obvious one is like you've been on the internet, you know what's there.
Yeah.
And so like you'll find anything on the internet.
Yeah.
And so I think there's just a reality of like, no, prayer is not just like prayer means something specific. You know, and so there is a concern of like, hey, you're gonna go in, you're gonna research this thing, and you're gonna land somewhere that's actually gonna teach you wrong stuff about prayer. You know, and not saying like you and we hold the keys to all truth around prayer.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like I do think we know more than others, given that this is part of our life. You know, we feel we talk to God. And so, but I mean, it's like, man, you jump on the internet, dude. you're gonna find some crazy
Yeah,
stuff.
like, yeah.
And so, and anyone could post an article, you know, you get, you jump on it, and it's all of a sudden it's from some website you don't know, but then that becomes your truth.
Yeah.
Because we just tend to believe stuff on the internet really easy. So I
Yeah.
think that's a pitfall, right?
Yeah,
It's just like,
yeah.
you're gonna search prayer, but what are you gonna get when you click on that link? You know? So.
Yeah, yeah, totally. I think for me, like even just thinking through that, just what I'm concerned about with it is, I mean, first and foremost is like, as much as prayer is good for people, I want people to pray to God, like, and not just saying God, like the God of the Bible. I want them to know and pray to Jesus, and then I'm even open and flexible with people being like, I'm praying to a God out there. I do think the God of the Bible is like could be like, well, I am the God out there, you know, and maybe works in their lives. I think there's an aspect of that, but yeah, I guess that's my biggest worry. I just like, man, even though prayer is a good thing and it does all these good things for us, like if you don't get the ultimate good thing out of it, which is relationship with God, who we're created for, like not what's the point, but it kind of is like, what's the point? Like what, you know? So that, I mean, I think that's my biggest concern in all this is like people will search this and they'll get just enough prayer, just enough away from God and who He is. To never get God, you know.
The inoculation.
Like, right. It's like Matt Chandler saying, inoculate yourself with just enough Jesus to never actually have Him. Right. So yeah, I think that would be kind of my big concern, and almost like more so like a reason for us as Christians to kind of be like, you know, the like experts in prayer. I mean, I'm even thinking the Old Testament, you know, like there would be these moments with these different people of God where the ruler or someone nearby would be like, listen, the people of God know how to interpret dreams. Bring in Joseph, he'll tell, you know, like, or Daniel, he'll know, like, all this stuff. It would almost be great if that's what happens for us as Christians, where it's almost like, Christians pray, so. Anyways, I think that's my problem, my biggest concern, is I don't want people to pray without, I'm fine with people praying, but I want them at the end of the day meet Jesus in the midst of it. So.
And that's the thing is like ultimately like we would say the driving reason behind prayer, the number one, right, is like communion with God, communion with Christ and the Spirit of God. Yeah. Not like He's gonna give you the stuff you asked for. Which sometimes He just does. He does that. Yeah. But I mean, I think like when you start, hey, we're gonna start praying now. It's Lord, like, hey, or not even Lord, but it's just God or whoever's out there. Please heal my friend. Yeah. And if it doesn't happen, right? Like a misunderstanding of prayer all of a sudden becomes this, I'm going to attribute things to this God I pray to. Yeah. And obviously He's not good. So I think there's some dangers in that too. Yeah. I think God's faithful and He'll meet people.
Yeah, that's true. I agree. So. Well, let me ask you this, just kind of a, maybe not a closing question yet, but one of our closing questions. What are for you, and we can both share, I guess, but what are some ways or forms of prayer that have kind of had an impact on you the last few years? Like, because I think prayer happens in a lot of different ways. So what are some of those ways that have really impacted you? Yeah.
I know there's one that, and you and I have talked a ton about this. Yeah. You brought it into something we do in service now, but if I could take that one, it's just talking about lament. Just being sad and being okay with that and telling God that things aren't as good, and everyone knows me, you know me, like generally things are pretty positive, but there's been like really hard things, there's been like really not great things that like I just haven't been happy about, you know, and it's just really comforting, because it's really nice when I know like I can talk to you about this stuff, right? Like that's good, that's comforting. I can talk to my wife, I can talk to our elders, I can talk to, it's different people, but man, I can talk to God about this stuff too, right? And He's not going to be upset that like I didn't navigate this right or say the right stuff. Like He's just pretty stoked that like I'll talk to Him. So I think that the pattern of it we see in Scripture is massive. We often talk about the Psalms of Lamentation, and especially when you get into Psalm 88, and just that whole idea of how Psalm 88 doesn't really have a bow on the end. It's just a guy complaining, and you're just like, how does God feel about the fact that He literally allowed Holy Scripture to be written that makes Him look bad? You know what I mean? Like that's just like a crazy idea to say like, hey, this thing makes me look not good. I want you guys to sing it in the temple. You know, like that's what what a secure and amazing God that's like cool with that. Because every other God you've ever studied is like, dude, if you say something bad about me, I'm gonna crush you.
Totally.
You know, and so that's been a big one. I think that like I've learned and grown in. I know that our church we've been trying to press into deeply too.
Can I ask you a little bit personal question about lament?
Yeah.
Until you hear. No, I know lament for, like, we've talked about this a little bit recently, but like lament for you isn't like your natural go-to. Like you do it, but like it's harder for you sometimes, or you don't even think of it. Why? What about you? Why do you think that is?
Yeah, it doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
If I'm honest, like. I think when I'm done with it, there's a real like cathartic, like God meets me in it. It feels good
then, but yeah.
Yeah, but in the midst of it, acknowledging pain for me just I don't like it, right? Because I'm way more, very like my wife, close friends. You guys all like, it's just way easier to just tell myself everything is good.
Yeah.
But then I feel it in other ways though, you know, like stress and everything. So I just don't like the way it feels, you know, to like have to be honest with that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes there is a reality to like an overbelief in. I think what ends up being is an overbelief in my. It used to be the word of how much. Mostly my family or whatever, the church, whatever, like needs me to be a certain way.
Oh yeah.
So then there's that like, well, I got to keep it together because even otherwise this thing could fall apart, which is just foolish.
Yeah.
That's ultimately God's job. So those two things. So I do it.
Yeah.
And I'm learning it.
Yeah.
But I still am not a fan.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, that's good.
Yeah.
I think for me, like to change prayer subjects or whatever, I think one of the...
Hi, Sierra. Good to see you.
I think one form of prayer that I've been really diving into the last couple of years even is contemplative prayer.
Yeah.
There was a conference that Serge Dene put on with Rich Villodas.
Villodas?
Yeah, I don't know how to say his last name.
Yeah.
I'm too gringo. But he, like, that was a huge part of the conference, and this idea of contemplative prayer is just kind of like sitting in the presence of God and almost not talking or almost saying very little. And I don't know how he posed it, but I eventually got this like image of like, man, sitting beside someone and just not talking and spending time with them even without talking, which happens very often when you have depth of relationship. Like in our culture, that's weird. Yeah, in our culture, that's weird. But I think when you really do know someone, there's just these moments where it's quiet, but you're spending time together. And so, I've been trying to do that. I've been really trying to dive into that moment, and I've been trying to do it in the way that, like I would with a person or something, just like, hey, how's it going? Hey, what's up? You know, like, and just kind of sit there and. So that's been good. I've been trying to do it like before a sermon, especially when we were at Flagstaff High School. Yeah. We're backstage in the wings or whatever. I have a minute before coming up after announcements or whatever, and I would just try to do that, and I felt that's very securing. It's very anchoring for me, and sometimes maybe it isn't that, but I felt for me that's one big. Aspect of prayer that's kind of benefited me. Growing me in the last few years. So. Yeah. Any other sorts of prayers?
Yeah. The tool that was taught to us by Paul Miller, and I'll show you this book in just a minute, called Prayer Cards, has been sweet. I came out of when I first learned about it, I came out like a shotgun and just did like tons of these.
Yeah.
And now I have about 10 that I just am really faithful with. Prayer cards are a little index card.
Yeah.
You write the title of kind of that thing you want to pray about at the top, and then you just keep returning to it, and you try and pray through them every day, and then write notes when you need to. Like, if I pray for this, and then this is where God answered, or I pray for this again, that type of idea. And just for me, man, it's been really a practical gift. Yeah. So, like, if you guys think that way at all, and just kind of need something tangible a little bit, get some index cards, write down the name of a close friend you want to pray for. It could be your job, right? It could be anything, you know, like your pet, your work, your wife, whatever. And just write it down and then just pray for that every day. And then and then hear God and see God answer. And then now you have this card. And then like now there's certain things that have like 4 or 5 cards, you know, that have been like, oh, there's just, I pray for this so much now that like now there's like a backlog of index cards. So
can I see like your journey of prayer, praying for that over time?
Yes, which is awesome. It really is cool.
Yeah, that's cool.
Like I love that part. So that's a neat thing.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So
yeah, I'm not good about keeping the cards. I lose them all the time. I was like trying to do that after Paul Miller was saying that, you know, and so. Anyways, I've been trying to use my phone for that, like just the notes aspect of my phone.
Yeah,
whatever, so.
They have an app too.
Yeah, they do. It's not very good. But,
oh really?
I tried using it, and at least at the time it was glitchy. Sorry,
John and Paul.
Yeah,
we love you guys.
Kind of know personally, but I don't think you're gonna watch this. But so anyways, that's been helpful for me too. Even just when people are talking to me and they need prayer for something, I'm like, hey, let me just like write this down on my phone, you know. Yeah. So, for me, one thing I've been pressing into the last few months. Again, we're not trying to show what the left hand is doing to the right hand or whatever, you know. Like we're just trying to share what's going on and stuff that's been helpful for us. But I've been trying to combine this whole fasting and prayer thing and.
Wow,
I think the first time, I know, for me that's,
This guy.
He's really surprised that's actually a real thing. We just had a conversation about fasting a few weeks ago that he called me a heretic. No, I'm just kidding. So anyways, all that being said, just trying to do that, you know, and letting my hunger throughout the day push me to praying for something.
Right.
A lot of times for me it's been like something more serious or something that I just want to remember to pray for. So, and I've noticed it's given me that hunger helps remind me to pray, and then that hunger also reminds me that God's the only one that can like satiate my need or whatever in that situation. And so anyways, that's kind of another one for me. Has there been any other kind of prayer practices for you that?
No, I think probably about 2 years, even maybe more than that. It's probably like 3 or 4 years ago when we first started interacting with Miller's stuff in particular. I think that was like, you know, so because I would hate that like if any of you are watching this and care what we think at all, we truly like if there's something that like if I could say like, hey, I really would love for you to grow in a certain area in your life. It's going to be prayer and probably the Bible. I'll toss the scriptures in there as well. But but talking to the Lord and just being honest and enjoying it, jumping into all this kind of stuff. So I'm just going to, again, if you've watched this or you watch it later, like right when this video ends, don't just go run to whatever you're doing next. Like would you commit to, hear me, I'm asking for 1 minute, right? Commit to 1 minute of prayer, of just like sitting back and actually trying to talk to God. If you're not a Christian or you don't do that, listen, it's as simple as the way you would talk to a friend. It's just God's actually listening to you. Like we actually believe that. And so just talk to him, tell him what's going on, ask him for stuff, you know, that type of deal. If you're a Christian, again, just don't pop off, like pray for a minute if you would. And then, you know, for me it was, I started in at 5 minutes and then it was trying to do 10 a day and it was all that, you know.
Yeah.
And so I think there's this sense of like, hey, I need to work on my prayer life. I gotta get up at 5 a.m. and knock it out of the park. It's like, nah, dude, just start
do what you can do.
Just start talking.
Yeah, that's right. I'm bad at waking up early, and this is something Randy, he doesn't ask me about, but he always asks about it. I pray often before I go to bed, and those are a lot of times when my quiet time is. It's not Christ-like, because Christ did seem to wake up early, but he also stayed up late to pray, so I'm halfway there.
You're halfway there.
Yeah, so,
thanks, Andy. Appreciate the shout out, and it's kind of hurtful. It's a backhanded compliment.
Yeah, Andy's been the main persecutor of our hair, and we've been just the main persecutors of Andy in general. So it evens out.
That being said, shout out to my wife Verity, and then shout out to Hannah Romero and Jessica Tenery for cutting Anthony's hair, so we don't look awful on Easter Sunday.
I felt awful. So
Yeah.
just my hair.
Okay,
My hair's disgusting.
Yeah.
I'm disgusted. So let's show, before we get off the rails here, show us some of these resources, these books on prayer, some of your favorite books on prayer.
Yeah.
I've read 2 of them and I really enjoy them, but show us them and talk about them.
Yeah, so I wrote a few books. This first one is probably the one that a lot of you maybe haven't read. It's by Henry Nouwen, who I'm just a big fan of, Catholic guy. The book's called The Only Necessary Thing. It's a collection of essays and prayers from Nouwen, and it drew me in just by the title. I mean, like The Only Necessary Thing and like that, and Pado Tai. But like if you...
The Reformers saying sola scriptura.
I know. Sorry. But that being said, it's a great quick read, and you can use it as a devotion, which I really like about it. So it's just like you got these short essays and things on prayer from Nouwen that I think are really brilliant. So I'm a big fan of his stuff.
Cool.
The next one is one that we both have. The next one we both read. So A Praying Life by Paul Miller. We have had the privilege of spending some time with Paul and him coming in and doing some trainings for Redemption. Him and the guy John Horry, and we love these guys. Yeah. I think the biggest thing with Paul Miller and all of his stuff is like, you just believe him. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like it's like you actually do the stuff that you're saying. You have a relationship with God. So this book I think is maybe the best practical. This will get you praying better. So A Praying Life. We have extra copies of these at the office that we'd love to give you if you wanted one.
Even I would say relational. Like I feel like that's a big buzzword in evangelicalism, but it really is relational. It's really like going to huge relational components of prayer.
It's organic.
It's organic.
The last one is this is our. If you didn't notice, we have a mandatory Tim Keller plug every time. But this one is it's by Tim Keller, one of our kind of favorite pastors, theologians. But it's entitled Prayer, so you know what it's about. There's a great quote that reads you from the back. It says, "Prayer is the only entryway into genuine self-knowledge. It is also the main way we experience deep change, the reordering of our loves. Prayer is how God gives us so many of the unimaginable things He has for us. Indeed, prayer makes it safe for God to give us many of the things we most desire. It is the way we know God, the way we finally treat God as God. Prayer is simply the key to everything we need to do and be in life." And I just think it's phenomenal. So anyway, those are 3 books. If what this says to you, if anyone wants a copy, let us know. We'll find a way to get you one if you're willing to commit to reading it and trying to cultivate a good prayer life.
That's great. Well, thanks for hanging with us, guys. We just want to talk about our culture and prayer. We just thought that Google thing was kind of interesting, and this conversation ended up being a little bit more robust than I expected it to be. So, we just encourage you guys see this as an opportunity. We kind of already talked through some of that. See it as an opportunity. If you're out there and you're not a Christian somehow and you're seeing this, 1, I'm sorry, but 2. Thanks for being with us. And
not sorry that you're not a Christian. Sorry that you had to watch us.
Yes, thank you for clarifying. No, I'm sorry that you spent 58 minutes here watching us. But that being said, I would just encourage you, don't let the benefits of prayer be the only thing you get out of prayer. I would encourage you even to ask Jesus if He would reveal Himself to you and see what happens there. But next Thursday, we're going to be doing Tuesday and Thursday. Tuesday's going to be our normal weekly update announcements type time for Vinny G Live. And then next Thursday, we're going to be doing our question and response time together. And so we want your questions. They don't have to all be the same. There can be all kinds of things. And so all kinds of topics, all kinds of ideas, small or big. And so send us your questions. Send us a text. Send us a message on here. You can comment on this post. However you want to get that to us, and we'll just talk through a handful of them or all of them if we have time, and so we'll go from there. So thanks for hanging with us. Any closing remarks on prayer or anything like that?
No, please do it.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks, guys. Vince is gonna walk over to the camera now, and
Anthony's gonna tell you his joke of the week.
Yeah, I already told you guys it on Tuesday, so you're just gonna see my face.